Welcome to another edition of The Manual. He is the Professor Alton Woods. I am Chip Rice. And man, did you see?
I did see.
Did you see what Jack Del Rio had to say about the insurrection, or as he said, dust up?
The dust up.
In comparison to the George Floyd
Riots.
protests.
Protests. I think he said riots and protests, but you know, the privilege just oozes out, doesn't it?
It does.
It just oozes out.
It's ridiculous. You are for your profession, are coaching the National Football League, which is, I think,
70% black.
70% black. So you deal with black men all the time. It's your job, and yet after all of this time, you still refuse to understand life from somebody else's perspective.
That's right.
Because you know, as long as you keep making money and living in your cul-de-sac with your gated community and hanging out with just your friends, that's not job related, you keep thinking the same way.
You know, the part that messes me up though is if you don't view, because maybe some people don't view, maybe people like him don't view the insurrection and the election as a black-white issue.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But I guess the part that messes me up is because the rallying cry behind people who share similar thought patterns as him is, I'm a patriot.
Right.
Right. You know, we don't, Colin Kaepernick can't kneel because that's unpatriotic.
Right.
But then you go to the institution that makes America what it is, Congress, and destroy it.
Right.
And take the lives of some people who were there doing their patriotic duty to make sure the process goes as the Constitution dictates it does.
Right.
And so how do you justify being a patriot and tearing down the very institution that represents patriotism? Even forget the black and white for a second, right? Because that's one issue.
Yep.
But even if you can find your way around it, you went to the capital of the United States of America,
Right,
and wreaked havoc
on the day that there was supposed to be a legal exchange,
legal
of
and
power.
peaceful exchange of power, which is what makes us who we are.
Right. Right.
But he's a patriot, or people like him are patriots, is what they say.
Yeah, it depends on what you want.
Yeah. And maybe if patriot didn't have any color to it, maybe that would be maybe we wouldn't be so upset.
Yeah, well, history has told us that color or not, they're just some people who want what they want.
Want what they want.
It's interesting. This is The Manual. So, you know, we're kind of talking about Coach Del Rio and looking at his comments concerning the insurrection that took place. It's interesting that there's a committee now that has presented before Congress to kind of talk about what happened, and most of it is pointed at the lack of response by former President Trump and either some other individuals that they're saying knew about what was going on, knew what was going to happen, and even in the midst of it did not act as far as people were concerned. So we got it's going to take some time for them to put all this information out. There's some people saying this is just political as we start to move towards possible candidates for running for the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and of course there is a political element to it. There's no way that you can deny that, but there should also be a question of responsibility.
Yes,
you know, because I know this is probably way too much, but you know, for me to look at President Biden and say, okay, why are these gas prices so high? You know, what is going on that we can't seem to get that under control, and it always seems to happen under a Democratic president.
Correct.
You know, and so, but you have other people that are saying under a Republican president, there's more oppression, there's less opportunity for minorities and people of color. So you got issues with both parties.
Absolutely.
You know, but in this particular instance, when you look at the insurrection, something that's very telling in all of this is I was watching it with my wife the other night, and she was like, "There go two black people." I was like, "Yeah, because there are some that believe along those same lines." What's really telling about all of this, though, is that there were not people being shot at, gunned down for them trying to enter into the Capitol building, for them entering into those places. And we all believe that if it had been black people that were there, we wouldn't have got past that first layer of gates without shots ringing out.
Oh, no question. No question. I mean, we can expand that even to the mass shootings, which, by the way, the most notable ones, because I haven't, and you know, I don't want to profess to be 100% accurate on this, but I did start thinking about it. I don't want to create any conspiracy theories, but I have been looking at least the ones that come to mind, you know, the Sandy Hooks and all of that kind of stuff. And those seem to happen in Democratic presidential regimes as well. Now, I can think of a number of reasons why that might be, but that's not for this conversation. But my point is this. A black man can get pulled over and has a lower likelihood to walk away alive than a mass shooter who doesn't take his own life. Right. So if you take out the suicide mass shooters, let's just move them out of the conversation. The ones who don't kill themselves seem to have a higher probability to walk out of a school or a business or wherever they did, or a church, wherever they did their crime, with major artillery and in some cases even body armor. It's more likely they walk away from that than a black man with a misdemeanor or something that gets pulled over that might have a weapon.
That might have a weapon.
Yeah.
And so it's hard because, you know, you and I have we have friends that are white. I hate to say things like we have white friends because we've got all kind of friends, but we have some friends that are white that we love and that we appreciate, and and most of them get it. But the problem is that, you know, people try to demonize black people, especially black men, when we become upset about situations like this, as if it's something wrong with us.
Right. And
we're telling you that based on the history of this country and the times that we've come up in, we have threats to our lives that other average white Americans do not.
Yeah. So let's back up a bit, because I mean, maybe for some people who are watching this or will watch this, we're dealing with extremes.
Okay.
Right? So let's just talk about corporate America.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
Because that's something that, you know, a lot of people have some level of experience in.
Okay.
On both sides of the equation. And I have two specific stories I'll share in my professional life. And so it's 2022. And I'm 51. So now everybody can do the math and figure out, you know, how long I've been alive, and you know that I didn't live in the civil rights movement. I wasn't an adult.
Right.
So what I'm about to tell you, you know, would have had to have happened from the 90s forward.
Right. With this being 2020, even if we go all the way back to 1970.
Can't do that because I said my professional career.
71. So
you got to at least let me get out of high school.
Right. Okay.
So I was born in 71.
Okay.
Let's add 18 to that.
Okay.
Right. That's 89.
Uh-huh.
So everything I'm going to happen only had the possibility, everything I'm going to talk about only had the possibility to happen between 1990 and 2022.
2020, yeah.
And I'm giving a wide range because I work for a couple of different companies, and I'm not trying to put a company on blast, but the story matters. Right?
Okay.
So two quick stories. One, I was working on a project, and I flew into the town that I was going to be working out of for a period of time, and you know, my boss is not there, but I'm also working with a senior leader, so I have a dotted line to that senior leader. And so I walk in there, and that senior leader says to me, he said, so when you look out, I'll just say on the floor to keep it generic enough. When you look out on the floor, what do you see? I say, well, I spent a lot of my life in call centers, right? So I said, well, I feel like a trick question, but computers and phones and people, I don't know. And he said, no, be more specific. And, so I just closed my little notebook up because I knew this wasn't a note-taking activity at this point.
Okay.
Because all I'm trying to do is figure out from the guy, I know what my job is, but I also need to know what he expects from me because I kind of have to manage my boss and then this other senior leader that's not my boss, but I'm in his space.
Right.
So I'm trying to do all of that the right way. So he says, well, Elton, if you look out there, you see black people. I said, well,
here we go.
And now what I will respect from him, let me just finish the story. So I said, okay. And he said, I'm going to be honest with you. He said, I just can't relate. I don't know. We're trying to drive engagement. We're trying to drive retention. We're trying to drive all of those things. And I don't understand the needs well enough to know how to drive that. And I said, so what you're asking me to do is be the PR for the black folks. And he said, well, that wasn't quite how I would phrase it, but okay. And I said, so what's my budget? Right? Because, but I guess two things. So one, somewhere between 1990 and 2022, we have in corporate America a conversation between a young black man and an older white man that goes something like, all of my employees are black and I don't know what to do and I need you to connect the dots for me, right? And so I'll give him a hat tip to him for being honest about it.
Right.
I didn't interpret it as racist, but I did interpret it as ignorant. Right. Ignorant to what other cultures and ethnicities need. Right. And frankly, not even willing to learn what they need. Right. Yeah, just find another black person to help. Yeah,
you already recognize that you're disconnected, but then what that also tells me is you haven't done anything else.
Correct.
To try to connect.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so, and then the second scenario was another one where I took a role, and every time you hired from the outside, there's people inside who wanted the role, so they're already huffing and puffing because they hired from the outside. Right. And then, then you have to report to the new person who came from the outside and all of that. But I remember sitting in a conversation with my boss at the time, and my boss said that he had received a complaint from one of my leaders, one of my direct reports, I'm sorry. And the complaint was, and I quote, he talks to too many black people. I bring this up to say this. Not everybody's wielding a gun and killing people because they're black. But we have a major problem in this country with understanding and respecting the needs and skills and gifts of the black community and a black man, even in the workplace. Yep. Even in the workplace. And so if it exists in the workplace, it's going to exist on the football field, Jack Del Rio. It's going to exist when things go haywire at the Capitol. It's going to exist in all of those places, because the issue, if I can coin a new thing, maybe it's not new, but it is to me, is not even white skin, but white mindset. And what I mean by that is we're up here and everybody else is down here.
We still believe that.
There are people who still believe that. Right. And that, until we fix that, none of this changes, because it just shows up in different ways.
It does. And so it's difficult then when you have been built up with self-esteem, you have parents that teach you who you are and who you're supposed to be, and then you go out into a world and you run into people who just feel like that just because of my race, I'm automatically better than you. Yeah. Then we don't have to. We're not talking about education. We're not talking about economics. We're not talking about the ability to move in and out of groups. We're just talking about just because this is my race.
That's right.
And I automatically am better than you.
Absolutely.
It's a terrible thing. And so as a black man, I find myself having to, in some ways, overcompensate for people who can't initially accept me for
Right.
for who I am.
That's
I have to do certain things, and I have to acquiesce in some ways to certain things. And so I've learned that now you have to be a little savvy, because you don't want to come in and just say, okay, you come in Black Power, got
Right.
your dashikis on, and you telling them that the white man is the devil and all this other stuff, because that's crazy. You're gonna get fired.
Right.
You can throw it out there.
And it's not true.
Yeah, it's not, and it's not
And it's
true.
not true.
And it's not true. So, but there are situations where you need to recognize that, okay, there's somebody in authority that could cause problems, and
That's
so I'm not gonna kiss your tail.
Right.
But I am going to learn how to be wise in that situation to know what to do.
Correct.
In the situation. And this is why the God factor comes in, because the favor of God can come on you and do things for you that nobody else could.
That's right.
And so I have to rely on that when I'm moving in different situations like that.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so it's funny you said something that, and maybe this is a Holy Ghost moment, or maybe it's just an Alton moment, I don't know, but you said, some people come in with, the white man is the devil, and that's not true. Right?
It's totally
but
not
the
true.
spirit of privilege, on the other hand.
Now, privilege is the devil.
Privilege is the devil.
Because
privilege will put you greater than.
Yeah, privilege lines up with pride.
Yes, there you
and
go.
Arrogance, and it was the thing that
And
destroyed. Yeah, it destroyed Lucifer. It has destroyed men over time.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And any time that you let arrogance and pride rise up in you, you are going to fall.
That's right.
It is 100 for 100.
That's right.
It's just going to happen.
It will absolutely happen.
So maybe now we kind of think about how that there's a thin line there. Okay, how do I stand up and have the right character without being arrogant or
Right.
just bowing down to
That's right.
a situation.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's tough. It's tough for a black man in America. I've stated this before, maybe not on our podcast before, because sometimes we talk about black people in America. But as I look over the course of history, I see different groups of people that have been in dominance and been in power,
right.
and been the same ones to inflict
right.
this type of thing on others.
That's right.
If you really study history, black people did not come from slavery. Black people came from what at that point was the center of the known world in Africa, based on all of the scientific and industrial things that were going on, and they had slaves.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So you look at the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire. You look at even the Chinese dynasties in different places. There have always been groups and races of people in power. We just happen to be living in a situation where we're coming out of oppression in these United States.
That's right.
So being a patriot to them is different from me.
Correct.
It's very different.
But the definition of the word doesn't have alternate meanings. In real life, it shouldn't be different.
Right. Okay. Right.
But again, if we don't agree on the beginning, we can't agree on the end.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if we don't deal with it, and so this is why some people say, "Oh man, slavery was X number of years ago." Right, but we hadn't dealt with it yet.
Right. Especially when we have a situation now. I do not know everything about critical race theory.
Sure.
But I know enough that when I was in elementary school, we didn't have classes on what the slaves were doing and racism and Jim Crow and all these other things. I didn't learn about that unless I got it from home or later on when I got in college. Now, I did have a shout out to Ramey Evans, our English teacher back at Salisbury High School. But you had some teachers who were black teachers that knew that these kids need to know something about some of the things that have happened as far as their history is concerned, both positive and negative.
And negative, that's right. That's right.
Because, it wasn't being taught to us.
Yeah, and I had similar experiences at St. Aug in New Orleans, right? We're talking about an all black, all male school.
Yeah,
so
you are an anomaly.
Correct.
in this in this
Correct.
society, because you had a full black experience as a high school student.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I had the equivalent of an HBCU experience in high school.
Right.
Absolutely. You know, and I think the tough part, you know, and I know I'm bouncing around because I got a lot in my head on this topic, but it's tough because now we fast forward and we're adults, and you know, our audience and, you know, many people are in the workplace, right? And you know, we have the buzzwords and acronyms now, DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, it's a big deal, and I think for a lot of people it's genuine. You know, but for a lot of people, companies, organizations, it's a check the box activity because it's politically incorrect to not do it. Right. But what you can often find in a culture, which you can often not find in a tagline, you can find in a culture of an organization. Right. And so you know, just to be clear, no matter how many workshops we do and how many webinars we do and all of that, it's still tough to be a black man in corporate America, right? Because your swag is different. Right. I went to a meeting one time with a group of coworkers, and you know, and the meeting was kind of, it wasn't an all employee meeting, but it was, you know, some big meeting, and it was a female coworker, and she leaned over to me and she said, "I'm sorry." I said, "What are you talking about?" And she kind of ventured over to the first row, which were all, you know, executives, and she said, "You're not represented in the first row."
Wow.
Then I looked at her and said, "And I'm sorry, because you're not either."
Wow.
Right? Because we're talking about all white males. Literally, I don't know if it was the same suit in terms of of brand name or designer, but it was same color, same, you know. And so you know, for us, our swag is different.
Right.
But it's still, we can still be professional.
Absolutely.
But it may not be navy blue and a white shirt.
Absolutely.
Right.
Which is why the sports world is so cool, because
you can express yourself.
You can express yourself in the different things that you do.
Right.
You know, and I don't know who told corporate America that you can, if you have to have this way. It's funny because like the president can only wear like what is it, the dark navy suit, you know, and a red tie, because the red tie means sincerity or something like that. So,
I thought it meant Republican. Can't they wear blue tie too? Can they do red or blue? Depend. I thought it was. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I don't know. Y'all comment and tell us which one it is. You know, but the fact is that they believe that people don't want to see you become, you know, too flamboyant or too out there. And there's a way that you kind of balance all of this stuff out. But there should still be creativity and individuality without you judging me as not as being ignorant because I do not dress like you. I don't act like you.
I don't act like you. My hair is different than yours, right? And so I do see some progression out there in terms of what's acknowledged as acceptable, but I still am not quite sure how that impacts the promotions and jobs on the back end of this thing.
Well, you know what we know for sure is that most people go with what's familiar to you.
Absolutely.
And so you have to be bold to be able to go outside of your comfort zone, to be able to allow other people in and really embrace other cultures, you know, diversity, and find out who people are. So, and last note, as a black man, and to the black men that are listening out there, don't make the situation worse. Because there's some stuff that we're doing to ourselves, to make the situation worse. You know, it's like everything does not have to be turned up.
Right.
You know, and a good command of the English language, you know, helps too. Everything doesn't have to be. Everything doesn't have to be slang. You know, everything doesn't have to be profane. You know, you can be a regular guy and still be successful.
That's right.
So. All right, so we just hollering at y'all, talking a little bit, getting some perspective out there. Make sure that you like and share at the Manual for You on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Love to have you be a part of the conversation. Put your comments in there so we can address those things too. It's been another edition of the Manual with the Professor Alton Woods. I am Chip Rice, and we will see you next time.